podcast is sponsored by TGO Magazine.
Hello and welcome to the very first TGO Show, an inside look at the great outdoors, brought to you by the Outdoors Channel. My name's Bob Cartwright, and in the months to come, the TGO Show, an audio version of the UK's most authoritative outdoor magazine, will be looking at some of the issues behind the outdoors news, reporting on packloads of new gear, and hearing from some of the magazine's best loved and most respected contributors. In this month's show, we'll be talking to gear editor Chris Townsend, who tells us why he thinks soft shells are something dreamed up by the marketing people of the outdoors industry. Everest summiteer Pauline Sanderson explains why she thinks international mountain guide Russell Bryce has had some pretty unfair criticism. The former boss of British Mountaineering Council reinvents himself as a singer of old climbing songs. And TGO columnist Jim Perrin takes us on a moonlit stroll on the moors and edges of the dark peak. But first, what's been happening in the great outdoors? Well, on Dartmoor, some military veterans have been fighting access restrictions and claim to have successfully disrupted army firing exercises by concealing themselves on live firing ranges within the national park. The group, Military Veterans Against Dartmoor Abuse, told us that 18 of its 39 members had occupied the ranges for 4 days, and has warned that it will continue to disrupt activities when live firing resumes in late summer. The veterans reckon their presence has severely restricted the areas of range used, and the guys hope to inspire other groups to demand a public inquiry into the military use of Dartmoor, as well as a national audit of all the military land use in Britain. A spokesman from the MOD said that they believe the majority of people who live and work in and around Dartmoor are proud to support the British military and cooperate fully to ensure public safety. You can read more about what's happening on Dartmoor in the August 2006 TGO magazine. Now, some of you might remember the former General Secretary of the British Mountaineering Council, Dennis Gray. Dennis, an accomplished rock climber, mountaineer and author, wrote a marvellous book called Rope Boy, which told of his climbing exploits with some of the legends of the sport like Don Whelan's and the great Joe Brown. Dennis retired from the BMC in the late 80s and has since climbed and travelled throughout the world, but most recently he's reinvented himself as a collector and singer of old climbing songs. He's just produced a CD called The Legend of Joe Brown, and Cameron McNeish asked him if the new CD is likely to have Robbie Williams quaking in his shoes.
Yes. No, not really.
It's good. Tell me a little bit about the musicians that you're playing with.
Well, the guy I'm playing with is a local guy here in Leeds 6. Leeds 6 is sort of inner city immigrant area, and Neil round the corner's got a bookshop, and he's got a track record in rock music. Actually, he used to play in a band.
Yeah, sounds a good guitarist.
Yeah, he is. He's good. Yeah, he's good on the.
And you're not a bad singer either.
Well,
you've got
very kind.
You've got some history as a bit of a folk singer, haven't you?
Well, when I was at university in the 60s, in the mid-60s, we had a folk group, Connected, you know, and there was five other students besides myself, and we used to have a folk club down in Leeds, a very famous pub for folk music, The Grove. And that was every Monday night, and it was very successful for the couple of years I was involved in it. Yeah.
But you mixed, didn't you, with some of the greats of the traditional folk music scene?
Well, we used to have people along who turned up on a Monday night, and over the years, some of the people who played there were amazing, like Jake Thackeray. I think we had the boy from Jethro Tull one night.
Oh, Ian Anderson, yeah.
Before he became famous. I was only a young boy then, playing the flute, and another night we had Christy Moore over from Ireland, and of
wonderful.
course they all went on to very great careers, yeah.
And the great Ewan McCall.
Ewan was out at a place called Broughty Ferry, just outside Dundee, and he used to have a folk club there with Peggy Seeger. And I used to go along to that when I was in that area. But I knew Ewan from, well, via contacts, you know, and the guy who went to jail over the Kinder trespass that Ewan wrote the Manchester Rambler.
Of course, yeah.
Benny Rothman was a friend of mine, and I heard all the stories from Benny.
Yeah. Dennis, climbing, of course, is a great tradition of parodies. How far back does that tradition go?
Well, the earliest ones that I know of are people like Geoffrey Winthrop Young at the turn of the century, but I do believe there were earlier ones, in the Victorian era, 1850s, 1860s, that sort of time. But they weren't very acerbic. They were very, very romantic, the ones that I've seen, most of them. Sort of extolling the virtues of the mountains and extolling the virtues of the guides and extolling the virtues of the climbers, They're a bit serious.
Yeah, and of course that changed, didn't it, in the sort of 50s and 60s, particularly with the songs of Tom Petty, who really was, I suppose, quite disrespectful in many ways.
Yeah, a lot of it was tongue-in-cheek. I mean, I don't think he set out to be in any way nasty at all. I think he wasn't jeering, it was always good fun. And I don't know anybody who had a song that he wrote about them, like even people like Chris Bonington, and that the Onward Christian Bonington song is a bit near the knuckle, but Chris took it in good part. I don't think he was upset by it at all. I
suppose it's a great honour to have a song written about you by someone like Tom Petty.
Well, he was an outstanding, but besides lyricist, he was an outstanding musician. He was very, very good, He could have been a professional musician. In fact, he was a toss-up when he was young as to whether he went into music or medicine. Yeah.
Is there anybody writing that kind of climbing song today?
The last person I know who wrote really good witty songs was Rosie Smith. And she was at Mountain magazine in the 80s, and she wrote one or two very funny songs. One in particular I remember about the names of the climbs on Stanage. It was a tongue twister, but she used to bring the house down when she sang it. But I haven't heard anybody since, no.
I believe you have a collection of over 100 of these climbing songs. I would like to hear any more of them on CD.
Well, everything depends on if this one's successful, and of course it's only just being launched, but I'm getting good feedback, and it's particularly sort of the middle older climbers, liking it, and one guy bought a copy and he said he's playing it in his car as he's driving about.
Well, I must admit, I played it in my car and I thoroughly enjoyed it, singing along with it. It brought back a lot of old memories.
That's what he said,
absolutely. And they are sort of sing-along type songs. So listen, where can our listeners get hold of a copy of this CD?
Well, at the moment, from myself, at 16 Royal Park Avenue, Leeds, LS6 1EY, £7.50 including postage.
And the CD is called?
It's called The Legend of Joe Brown.
Okay, then so wish you the best of luck with it, and I hope you sell lots of copies, and we see you perhaps in the hit parade challenging Oasis and Robbie Williams and the rest of it.
What I do hope is it encourages some of the younger climbers to keep this great tradition going. Yeah.
On the Clogwyn, close to Ogwyn, where the shady cliffs incline, clung a climber a final time with his daughter Clementine. She was leading like a hero on 100 feet of line, while her father, nervous rather, fast belayed his Clementine. From the cliff top I was watching
The Climbing Clementine, one of the songs on the CD The Legend of Joe Brown by Dennis, is available from www.dennisgray.itgo.com. Now, if you want to know what the weather is like in, say, Torridon or Glencoe, you'd look up a weather forecast, wouldn't you? Or in winter, if you wanted to know what the avalanche conditions were like, you would phone up for an avalanche forecast. Well, a brand new service has just been launched that will provide you with daily information about the intensity of midge activity in any part of Scotland. The midge forecasting system has been developed by Advanced Pest Solutions at Edinburgh University and is the brainchild of leading midge specialist Dr. Alison Blackwell. The forecasts come in 1-day or 5-day versions, and you can receive the forecast via your mobile phone texting service. The system works by collating data from around 30 midge traps throughout Scotland, and can predict midge activity for any part of Scotland, provided weather forecast data is available. The new forecast, which has been developed from funding from Calagas and Scottish Enterprise, is available at www.midgeforecast.co.uk. Very few months go by these days without some kind of controversy emanating from the highest mountain in the world. Everest may have been climbed many hundreds of times, but it's still newsworthy, and now the first person to have travelled from the lowest point on Earth to the highest has defended the guide, who allegedly instructed Sherpas to leave British climber David Sharp to die near the summit of the mountain. Earlier this year, Pauline Sanderson cycled more than 8,000 kilometres with the Everest Max expedition, from the Dead Sea in Jordan through 8 countries to Tibet, in a successful bid to be the first team to complete what they dubbed the longest climb on Earth. Pauline, climbing with her husband, Glenmore Lodge instructor Phil, was the first of 3 of the team members to summit Everest. Sadly, news of their success has been overshadowed by 11 deaths on the mountain during this year's climbing season. Media reports have focused on New Zealander Mark Inglis, a double amputee who summited on bionic legs, and who, along with 40 other climbers that day, passed Sharp while he was still alive. Inglis said afterwards that he and fellow climbers were advised by their expedition guide, Russell Bryce, that Sharp was beyond help. Fellow Kiwi Sir Edmund Hillary has since led vociferous criticism directed at Inglis and Bryce, saying no ailing climber would have been abandoned by his peers during the first ascent of the peak in 1953. But Pauline Sanderson has described Bryce as an unsung hero who made Everest a safer place, and she has expressed concern about the trend for people to attempt the mountain employing only ground support services. Cameron McNeish caught up with her at Glenmore Lodge and asked her why Bryce would advise his clients to ignore a dying climber.
Because Russell Bryce has got a phenomenal amount of experience, having run a commercial outfit for over 11 years on Everest. He's himself been he's a bit of a legend climbing Everest through different routes himself. He's an experienced mountaineer. He's had to look after people at the highest level, and when he got the assessment from the Sherpas saying that Dave's arms were wood from the elbows and knees down and his face was black, his only assessment was this man is not going to make it down to Camp 3. He will not survive the journey. It would incorporate many Sherpas and people helping him down, and he would be dead by the time he got there. So his best option was to tell them to leave him and make him comfortable and not risk the lives of his clients and his Sherpas. Seemed reasonable to me when he explained it like that, and you've got to respect that kind of experience.
Yeah, I guess you do. Does Russell have any kind of medical qualification to allow him to make that sort of decision?
I don't believe he has, but if you ask any normal doctor, a GP, to go into a mountain situation, they won't have the experience. But if you ask a man who's had to deal with altitude experience in every dimension and frostbite at every level, is he qualified to make that kind of decision? I think he probably is, personally.
Yeah, did you come across any of this get to the top at all cost attitude when you were on the mountain?
I actually found the opposite. Most of the people that came and visited our camp, and we had a very sociable environment at base camp, and that's where you get to know all the different teams if you choose to, and if anything there was mutual support. I mean, we were in and out of each other's camp, offering each other's advice. I was going over to Russell and asking his opinion about stuff, and the guys on his team, they were great. So if anything, I think there was far more of a supportive attitude than a get up there whatever cost, don't care about anybody else attitude. But I suppose in the same breath we were mixing with teams that were kind of like-minded. We were tight teams that were with each other for a reason, as opposed to just how do you put it, there as an independent client sort of thing. Yeah. So no, anything opposite.
Now there appears to be two kind of operators working on Everest. One kind who'll actually guide someone all the way to the summit, and another kind who will only take people as far as Everest Base Camp and lead them to it. How does that work?
My understanding is that you you can buy into a ground operator who will supply everything for base camp and advanced base camp and load all the camps up to the summit with oxygen and food and everything. But then you have your own personal Sherpa who will carry your oxygen. But now that operator there isn't actually offering experience. So if you go with somebody like Russell, for example, what you're paying for, which is a lot more than the ground operator, you're paying for his experience. So, and there are other operators out there that offer the same thing, and good luck to them, because to be quite honest, the experience they have is what you're paying for. And the ground operators are much, much cheaper, so you'll get a bunch of strangers from all over the world coming together. So you can have 2 from France or 1 from England. They don't know each other. They'll all share the cost of this ground operator, and they'll go up as independents, maybe with their Sherpa carrying their oxygen if they're doing it with oxygen.
And some of these people might be capable of climbing Everest and some might not.
There's no watchdog. There's nobody there to say yes or no. It's up to the ground operator or the commercial outfit to say yes or no.
Should there be some kind of watchdog on Everest? Is it possible?
I don't know how it can be. You're dealing with international. You've got China. You've got Nepal. It's a major income for them. Who's going to dictate to them? It's going to be a hard one to have a watchdog and actually have some real legal status.
Yeah, I suppose these sort of controversial events have overshadowed your own expedition, which was a fantastically successful one. Tell us a little bit about it.
Our expedition was a success, absolute success. We started at Jordan and we were out to complete the longest climb on Earth, which was cycling from Jordan in the Dead Sea through Turkey, Syria, Iran, Pakistan, India, Nepal, and then finally to base camp in Tibet, and then to climb Mount Everest. So we'll have gone a phenomenal amount. It's over 8,000 kilometres of cycling, and I have to say, when I got to base camp, I was actually sad, because the cycling phase was so much fun, and the team had bonded so well. Every morning we'd wake up, and probably within 10 or 15 minutes we'd be laughing. So that was the kind of team that we had starting the mountain, and that made such a difference, because the mountain was the hard bit. That was the one that was a lot more stressful and all the rest of it that goes with it. But even then, it was great because the team worked so well together. A lot of respect, a lot of banter, a lot of healthy attitude. It was great.
Lovely. Now, you say you started in Jordan. Did you start at the Dead Sea?
Yes.
So you went from the lowest point on Earth...
The lowest point on Earth to the highest point on Earth.
Fantastic.
Yes, and 3 of us out of the 5 cyclists summited. 2 and the other 3 got to the North Col. The other 2 got to the North Col, and our support team got to the North Col as well.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Now, tell me, do you feel... has Everest's reputation been tarnished, do you think, by all the controversies in the past few years, or is it still a pretty special place?
Oh, toughy. Mixed emotions. I think it is a tough place, and I think if you're going like we did as a tight team, enough experience between you to feel that you're going as this tight team, it's a positive experience. It was a really good experience. I think if you're going as an independent person and you're left alone to make your own decisions and stuff, I think it would be a very scary place. It depends on what you want. Also, the commercialisation, everybody says it's like a plod. It's not a plod. Can I say that? It is not a plod. The summit day is a technical element of grade 2, 3 mixed Scottish. You know, it's hard.
At altitude.
Yeah, at altitude with oxygen in the middle of the night. It's hard. So, obviously, the element of having to walk past bodies is something that nobody wants. That's always going to be a tarnish on the mountain. But and I wouldn't actually say to anybody you'll have go and do it, because I think I'd be scared. There's too many things that the elements come in. But I still believe that 70% of it is probably decision making and 30% is luck. So, and I think there's important decisions to be made. So I would never take it on as whimsically as to say anybody can pay 40 grand and get up. I don't think that's true, unless you're either with a guide that's making all those decisions for you. But no, even so, it's mixed emotions.
And I suspect that's not the last we'll hear from Everest. Those who attempt to climb the world's biggest mountain will, inevitably, continue to create controversy. Now to another controversial subject. What is a soft shell? Is it an innovative and useful bit of outdoor gear, or is it something the marketing people have come up with to make us all throw away our fleeces? Cameron's been out with TGO gear editor Chris Townsend and asked him for a definition of a soft shell.
I can give you a definition of what I think it should be. The original definition for a soft shell was a garment that gave good protection against the wind and a little bit of warmth, but wasn't fully waterproof, which meant that it was very breathable and so comfortable to wear most of the time. So it's basically a marketing term. Most of the fabrics were around long before the term was invented. It was rather like, we've got these fabrics, what can we do with them and how can we market them?
has it been a positive innovation, do you think?
In some respects, I think there's a mixture there. I think it's positive in that it has encouraged the idea of using something windproof most of the time, rather than always wearing a fully waterproof whether you needed to or not. So I think that is positive. But I think some of the things that have come along, like waterproof soft shells, are a nonsense and are not positive.
Why? Why do you say that?
Well, a waterproof soft shell is basically a waterproof garment with a little bit of insulation in it. It's no more breathable than an ordinary waterproof, so it's not a soft shell, and simply confuses the issue of what is. And personally, for mountain use and walking, I can't see the point of these things.
Is there a sense that these soft shells are probably best used in the cold, dry mountain climates of the world, rather than the sort of maritime, damp climate we have in this country?
Again, I think that's true with some of them. The ones that have membranes in and are not quite as breathable as ones without, that's definitely true, because the problem with the membrane is it impedes the breathability, and if the garment's wet, it impedes it far more, so you're more likely to get damp inside. But some of the more breathable ones, I think, are fine for use in the UK. I mean, some of them are very water resistant. You can wear them in showers, they'll dry out between the showers, and because they're more breathable than a waterproof, they're more comfortable to wear.
You've just reviewed a whole lot of soft shells for the next issue of TGO. What was your best buy? What's your favourite one?
My favourite one, oddly enough, did have a membrane. This was the Mie Touring Hoodie. The reason it was my favourite was as much to do with the design as the fabric. I think, for example, a soft shell needs to have a hood if it's really going to be something you can wear in all but the heaviest rain. And an awful lot of soft shells are basically cut like old-fashioned cardigans. They don't have a hood, they don't actually have much weather protection, so you need to put a waterproof over them in even light rain or a mild wind. The thing with the touring hoodie is it's got a good hood, it's got large pockets that you can use when you've got a hip belt on, and it seems to be cut for active use and not casual high street wear.
So we've gone through the whole fleece thing, we're going through this whole soft shell business. Everybody's slightly confused with it all. Looking into your crystal ball, what do you think will be next that the marketeers will come up with?
I think the next thing is probably going to be more comfortable waterproofs. I can't see that soft shell can go any further, because it's been stretched now between garments that are fully waterproof and garments that aren't even windproof and are barely more than a fleece. But I think with waterproofs, if the soft shell technology being used at the moment to make waterproof soft shells could be used to actually make waterproofs themselves more comfortable, this would be progress. And the other thing that's desperately needed is better durable water repellency, DWR, because any breathable waterproof is only as good as the DWR, and frankly, the word durable is a bit of a con here, because they're not. They wear off far too fast.
OK, so there's a challenge for you waterproofing boffins. How to make DWR more long-lasting. Time to get your diary out now. We've some advance notice of what looks like a great event next spring. Following on from Fort William's marketing campaign to claim the title of Outdoor Capital of Britain, the Lake District's Keswick plans to secure its position as the Outdoor Adventure Capital of Britain, with an announcement that it is to host the Keswick Mountain Festival in May 2007. The event will offer an activity-based programme of guided walks, scrambling, water sports and Nordic walking, as well as training in conservation and navigation techniques. There will also be a comprehensive schedule of lectures and talks from outdoor personalities, walkers and mountaineers, as well as a series of practical outdoor equipment demonstrations involving suppliers, local retailers and activity providers. Lake District resident Chris Bonington is to be patron of the event, and he's pledged his full support, claiming that the Mountain Festival is going to establish Keswick as the undisputed outdoor adventure capital of Britain. I wonder what Fort William has to say about that. Anyway, you'll find information and an updated calendar at www.keswickmountainfestival.co.uk. For some 15 years now, Jim Perrin has been one of TGO's most popular columnists. He's been described as Britain's greatest landscape essayist, and his recent biography of mountaineer Don Whelan's received great critical acclaim. Jim is based in North Wales, but in this extract from one of his TGO columns, he takes us to Derbyshire's Dark Peak, where we join him as he leaves the head of Howden Reservoir to make his way towards Howden Edge. There are dark powers, he says, and the powers of darkness.
It is strange to be out here alone in the moonlight, which transmutes everything to a different state of being. An electric conurbation on my blind side, and hours to go before the dawn, I follow my mooncast shadow south by west and think on the themes of this landscape. There is stone, as in the barrow stones, griner stones, shepherd's meeting stones, horse stones, and the bleaklow stones themselves, rocking stones, white stones, the crow stones, high stones by which I'm now passing. There are edges that stretch all the way down from here along the eastern bastion of the Derwent Valley, Howden Edge, Derwent Edge, Bamford and Burbage and Stanage edges where I rock climb through the decades of my bodily strength. White Edge, with its unvisited hinterland of Big Moor, where the adders will be curled still and cold, awaiting the touch of March sunshine on their patterned skin before the females stir, plump from their retreats in ancient field walls or under boulders alongside ritual circles left by the old race in a former time, and slither out to evoke old animosities and dreads in humankind. Froggatt and Kerber and Gardens edges, redolent of sunshine and the timed and skipping expertise of outcrop gritstone days, and all the ambitious danced dangerings of youth that were the body's poetry. Far to the south are Heartland and Fallings edges that are faceted viewpoints into the walled wolds of the White Peak, tamed and colonized country on its surface. Its dry landscape makes me think perversely of water and of the subterranean innerscapes of limestone. Also, I think of the wind, the wuthering of it about and around those fantastical rock shapes it has sculpted throughout the high places of this landscape, and the homely, familiarizing, reclaiming appellations bestowed upon them, salt cellars, wagon and horses, cakes of bread that lie ahead of me on the long crest, dimly visible, spectating the dark. Beyond these four themes of stone, edge, wind and water, there's a further one, hovering in liminal space. What comes to you on a moonlit ridge is a different thing entirely to the more customary illuminations of life. To walk alone in a wild place in the moonlight is a kind of ghostly and distant variant to our normal celebratory outdoor customs, is to take ourselves to a place we may sense but do not often go, and to find something expressed there achingly of which we have profoundest need to know. It is an effort to be out of doors, having forsaken habitual routines at these times. The regulated world is set against such experience, and for the most part its regimented mindset will consider it unwise. And if the strangeness of the experience proves threatening to individual consciousness, as well it can, where fear is personally and culturally induced, the effect may be inhibited. But you remove yourself from the everyday in order more closely to connect, in order more clearly to counterpoint clarity of imagination with the mundane detail of life. In the darkness, understanding comes, suffusing it with a pale light more magical than anything mere possession can bring. Here, in obscurity, the riches of mystery and suggestion are objectified. And the cost, if you must count it as such, a squall of sleet, the dimming of the moon by cloud, a stumbling long descent through woods, water sluicing over a dam, anxious crossing, solitary footfall of self along the silent forest road, door of the pub where warmth and company were looked for, locked against latecomers. Is all this so terrible? The way we follow has much to do with what's within, is our own energetic and loving spirit that must be released and allowed to flow. This is the invincible summer of the heart, and to listen attentively to the devotional melodies is to cross into liminal space, to find our way to the edge in the moonlight and wander there with whatever presences may come. Do you not find this heartening? That things come again in all the sufficient beautiful strangeness of their being, making the unknowable briefly known, if we dare to venture there.
TGO's Jim Perrin and the rather gothic powers of the moonlit ridges and moors. Well, that's about it for this show. Thanks to all our contributors and to the Podsafe Music Network who provided the music. Check them out at music.podshow.com. Keep listening for the next TGO Show podcast, and indeed check out TGO Magazine at www.tgomagazine.co.uk, the UK's most authoritative outdoor magazine, produced by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Until next time, this is me, Bob Cartwright, and the Outdoors Channel, wishing you happy hiking. To quote Walt Whitman, may the trail always rise before you and the wind be ever at your back. See you next time.
This podcast is produced and hosted by the Outdoors Channel. Find out how easy it is to subscribe to all our podcasts by visiting theoutdoorschannel.co.uk.